And welcome back as we're continuing our look at 2020, courtesy of Jonathan Cahn's book, The Avatar. And so we are going to do a little bit more review. Let me get my screen share going here, then get back to some new material. So we had talked about how just as Athaliah had a political daughter of Ahab and Jezebel, had a political marriage over to the nation of Judah, so too we have a political alliance here with Kamala Harris joined as the avatar of Athaliah, joining up with Joe Biden, who would fulfill the template of Jehoram, son of Jehoshaphat. So continuing on from here into later 2020 and moving on from there. September 18th of 2020, we had on the Feast of Trumpets, a day of national judgment and correction, we had the passing of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And again, I'm not passing judgment on an individual, I'm saying this happened on this date. The sacred calendar turns to the days on which it's believed heavenly court passed its verdict as to who would pass from the earth. And this 2020 Feast of Trumpets starts sunset Friday, September 18th. And that's when Justice Ginsburg passed from the earth, Friday, September 18th, on the Feast of Trumpets. So then, September 26th, we have the announcement of an event on the National Mall that's going to be called The Return, where it's a big Christian rally taking place. And we've seen the different videos on that. Prayer march draws thousands to the mall. No, I don't want that. Anyway, so let me cheat real quick. Take a big breath. Prayer march draws thousands to the mall seeking healing for the nation. Okay, I got it in. The Return, a first-hand perspective. So here's all these people, thousands of people gathering on the National Mall to pray for the nation. As the time Jonathan Cahn is leading out there, he breaks the potter's vessel just as Jeremiah had done, blows the shofar. More on that as we go. So this is a pretty big event on September 26th, the day of return in 2020. And here we are on the National Mall where this is taking place. So there's the Washington Monument. There's where it's happening. There's the U.S. Capitol right there. So this is where it's happening with the Capitol as their backdrop. And all the thousands of people lined up here for this.
I think there's supposed to be another one for the American birthday.
Yeah, there are different events being scheduled for America's 250th coming up this year. So I don't know the specific details yet on that. But we'll definitely keep our eyes out. There should be some stuff to see. So Jonathan Cahn blasts the shofar on the National Mall there while something else is taking place. While the president is announcing his Supreme Court nominee to replace the passing of Supreme Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And these events are happening at the same time, to the point to where on September 26th of 2020 at 5:04 and 33 seconds p.m., right as the trumpets blast, that's when President Trump announces Amy Coney Barrett as his nominee, to the second, right at that moment. As they're praying for the turning over of Roe v. Wade and the change of direction, Trump nominates a pro-life candidate for the Supreme Court. So that happened at that instant. Let's go on down here. 241. So while this is all happening, we share this from the Avatar on this occasion here, talking about jubilees. Something to consider. We mentioned the jubilees going from 1867 to 1917. When after 400 years, the Ottoman Turks left Israel and the British took it over. Then from 1917 so they're able to start the process of having their land back and the return of Israel to their own land. 50 years after 1917 in World War I was 1967, the Six-Day War, when they got Jerusalem back after Jordan entered the war and they warned them not to. 50 years, Jubilee, after 1967 is 2017, when President Trump, representing America, acknowledged Jerusalem as the capital, and we sought to move our embassy over and all that stuff. So that national recognition on the 50-year mark. So Jubilee's pretty big things. Jonathan Kahn shares this. It would not be the last time the mystery of the Jubilee and the trumpet, or the Trump, would manifest. Both abortion in America and the case Roe v. Wade began in the year 1970. So it was in 2020, the Jubilean year of both, that Trump sounded and the overturning of Roe v. Wade began. So you see that, the 50-year thing between 1970 when it started, now the returning and the reversal of it beginning 2020. So pretty cool. Another new event in 2020, now to October of 2020. This was somewhat interesting. That's not the one I wanted, is it? I think that skipped. There we go. That's the one I wanted. So, we've mentioned avatars and gods, lowercase g, demons, spirits, being represented by human beings on Earth, carrying out their will, whether they are willing participants or just not even realizing the spirit behind the scenes of what they're doing. We've seen in the decorations of Egypt, in the iconography there, how they would have pharaohs, but with body parts of other animals, and with other imagery like that, and other images of their different animal gods, basically equating the human being pharaoh with a god himself, and somewhat. Why am I bringing this up now when we're talking about 2020 in the modern age? Because of this right here. That right there. What is that, pray tell? Well, we're going to tell. So, what do we have to say about that interesting piece of art? Let's see. Here's the behind-the-scenes story on what we are looking at here. There we are. October of 2020, specifically October 20th. So this image that came out, as I mentioned, as images of ancient Egypt merged the representations of the pharaohs with the features and attributes and symbolism of the gods they embodied, again lowercase g, so this image merged a photograph of Kamala Harris with the features, attributes, and symbolism of a pagan goddess, appearing just before Harris was to be lifted up to the heights of American power. Could this have been a warning? The image was created not by an enemy, but from Harris's own house, from the daughter of her sister Maya. Her niece did this. It was intended to glorify its subject. But what it did was join to the gods the woman who had been joined to the gods from the day of her birth. It manifested the mystery. Everything we talked about with the Hindu implications of her date of birth and everything and all that. So here it is. If it may have seemed like a stretch before or lots of coincidences, here's her own niece saying, no, boom, here it is. Yeah, let's bring it together. But there's more to the story here. Harris is being portrayed as a Hindu goddess by her own family. In view of all the connections from her name, goddess, Kamala Deva, which means lotus goddess, to the date of her birth, the image is beyond striking. As did the ancient images of the Egyptian pharaohs. The image revealed Kamala Harris as one with the gods, the avatar of the goddess. What's interesting, there's a goddess Kamala, as we talked about, Kamala, Lakshmi, which is her sister's middle name. Though the goddess Kamala is described in terms of ferocity and warfare, the slayer of her enemies, images depicting her as such are not common. Usually you see her with her multiple arms and all the lotuses and everything, maybe a conch shell or whatnot. The closest match would be that of the goddess Durga. So it was with the Hindu goddess Durga that Harris was merged. And yet in Hindu writings, one can find Durga as a manifestation of the goddess Lakshmi, Kamala. The image portrays Harris as a Hindu goddess riding into battle on a lion. Such elements are often linked to the goddess Durga, but Hindu imagery also depicts Lakshmi or Kamala riding into battle, mounted on a lion, wielding an array of weapons in her many arms. In the image, the goddess Harris is battling an enemy beast of Hindu mythology. She juts her spear toward her shoulder and neck to vanquish him. But in place of the creature's head, it was the head of Donald Trump. And as far as the lion on which the goddess was riding, it was none other than Joe Biden, his face replacing that of the lion. Now, let's talk about this for just a moment. As strange as the image is, equally strange is the message. Now remember, this is not the 2024 election, this is 2020 election. When it appeared, Harris was not contending for the presidency, nor was she directly battling Donald Trump. Biden was. But in the image, Biden, as the lion, was playing a supporting role, enabling Harris to battle against Trump. None of it fit the election of 2020. So we're going to see how this all plays out. So I see your facial reactions to some of this, but talk to me. What do you think?
How old was the person who did that?
I have not looked up the age of the niece. I think she was a...
I don't understand why she
Well,
did
yeah.
that.
If Kamala is her early middle age when she's running for the vice presidency, then her sister would be of similar age within a couple years, and then so the niece would be young adult. So yeah, this was not a kid's drawing or doing. And so again, it was a way of us celebrating her aunt. And so, yeah, it caused some uproar in the Hindu community with some folks. But yeah, so for Jonathan Cahn to be making these Hindu goddess connections isn't as much of a stretch when we see that her own family is doing it. So there's that. But let's close out this next section here, going to November 3rd of 2020. What happened on November 3rd of 2020? We all went to bed and then woke up to a different morning. November 3rd of 2020, where it stands, the election hinges on key states. The final results may take a while. Y'all remembering this from the 2020 election? Man, what a year. Not only did we have COVID, we had an election. So yeah. Key swing states, including Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and North Carolina, remain either too close or too early to call. So we went to bed with all these states with Trump in the lead, and then they stopped counting, and then we woke up in the morning, and all of a sudden Joe Biden won all those states. Remember that? Yeah. So let's talk about this 2020 election here, and this will close for the night here and with that, and then a closing scripture. So let's get some thoughts on this election night that we all lived through here just 6 years ago. Here we are. So now, we mentioned on the side contrary to the Judeo-Christian God and Scripture, Ahab, Jezebel, Joram, and Athaliah, and now Joe Biden as Jehoram. So we've got Jehoram and Athaliah running against, on the other side, Donald Trump as the avatar of Jehu from the Scripture. And again, not putting him on a pedestal as a human being, just showing that he was used of God in the template the same way that Jehu was. So what's happening here with this 2020 election? Why is this different than 2016 or what we're going to see in 2024? In the election of 2016, Trump rose to power as an outsider to the White House, a disruptor of the establishment, and an overturner of the status quo. The dynamics of the election matched the ancient dynamics of Jehu's rise to the throne. We saw that in 2 Kings chapter 9. Therefore, he was victorious. It fit the template. But in the election of 2020, he ran as an insider. He ran as an insider. He was the president, the one who presided over the establishment in the present status quo. The dynamics of that election did not match the dynamics of Jehu's rise to the throne. Therefore, he would not prevail. In the election, he also comes as a supplanter, taking his adversary's place as king on the throne, undoing his adversary's policies. In the election of 2016, the man who sat in the Oval Office was Trump's adversary, Barack Obama, the template of Joram, son of Ahab and Jezebel. The dynamics matched those of the ancient template, the rise of the supplanter. Therefore, Trump would prevail and succeed Obama as president and undo his policies. But in the election of 2020, there was no adversary, no other leader occupying the Oval Office. It was Trump himself. He began his race as the nation's leader. Therefore, the race was not in accord with the template of Jehu's rising, and thus he would not prevail. Last thought on this. In the election of 2016, Obama was eclipsed by Clinton, who bore his mantle. So Joram was eclipsed by Jezebel. The dynamics matched those of Jehu and Jezebel. Therefore, the American Jehu would be victorious. She would be thrown down. But in the election of 2020, there was no eclipsed king and no female leader standing in the place of the eclipsed king to contend against a rising Jehu. His adversary was not a woman, but Joe Biden, and the template of Joram, and was not a president, but outside the White House. Therefore, it was not in accord with the template, the ancient template, and therefore Trump would not prevail. So Trump running in 2020 was not a Jehu moment, so it didn't have a Jehu outcome. So that's an interesting thought. What do y'all think? We know all the questionable shenanigans we talk about with the 2020 election, but the fact that it could have been something spiritual behind the scenes as well. Interesting thought. Maybe more to the story there. So with that, let's close back in Scripture for the evening. Let's go back to Genesis, but this time chapter 33. Go ahead and stop this screen share here. Genesis 33, then a closing thought from the devotional book, and then we'll close out in our season of prayer together. Genesis 33. So after wrestling with the angel of God, Jacob, now Israel, goes on from there. Genesis 33. Meets up with his brother, his estranged brother Esau. They hug and kiss and make up for lost time. And then, let's see. So let's see. And I have to share this verse. When Jacob and Esau meet, and Esau is kind and gracious to him after all they've been through, in Genesis 33:10, Jacob said, "No, please, if now I have found favor in your sight, accept my gift from my hand, for I see your face as one sees the face of God, and you've received me favorably." So there again is that notion that the kindness your face is showing me is the kindness of the face of God. So there's kind of a tie into the earlier devotional thought there. But so they part ways, and let's go down to verse 18. Genesis 33:18. Now Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from Paddan Aram and camped before the city. He bought the plot of land where he had pitched his tent from the hand of the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. Then he erected there an altar and called it El Elohe Israel, which means God, the God of Israel. So what's the closing devotional thought here? God, the God of Israel, is what he says here. So Jacob reveals the name of God. He builds an altar, calls it El Elohe Yisrael, God, the God of Israel. What is he saying? And this is from Jonathan Cahn's Book of Mysteries, 365 devotionals. Israel was Jacob's own name. So for Jacob to call him the God of Israel is the same as naming him the God of me. Remember, there's no nation of Israel yet. The only Israel is Jacob here. So, and then God goes on from there to refer to himself as the God of Israel. It's God's will to join his name to the name of his people. Scriptures say if you're born again, you are also Israel, spiritual Israel. So you must also join your name to the name of God. So you must join your name to him. You must give him a new name. He must become the God of you, the God of your name here, the God of Eric, and so on and so forth. The one named Mary must know him as the God of Mary. It's his will your name be in his name be joined to yours, just as his life is joined to your life, his identity to your identity. His secret name is as sacred as all his other names. It means he's the God of your existence, your life, God of your past, God of your needs, God of your wounds, God of your heart. It means he's the God of you and all you are. So it is the name that only you and he fully know the meaning of. When I say God, the God of Eric, you understand what I'm saying, but me, knowing more about Eric than all of you do, it carries more of a meaning, understandably. Sister Leslie to say the God of Leslie, that means more to Leslie than it does to me, because it's personal. And so that's the idea here. He's the God of all you are, of you and all you are. So Jacob asked God for his name and discovered it. For those who truly know him, this is the name they too discover, the God of you. So thought that was kind of a nice personal touch there, because I just read God of Israel. Okay, we're just used to hearing Israel. No, that's the God of me. There was no nation yet. So the God of Israel is also the God of you. So feel free to take personal ownership of that and rejoice in that as well. Any thoughts on this or anything else we've considered in these sessions this evening? All good? All righty. Well, that puts an end to 2020 for us. And so next time around, we'll be picking up in 2021 and moving forward from there, getting closer and closer to the present. So if nothing further, enjoyed being with you. Let's go ahead and stand and meet in the center aisle, close out in our season of prayer together.